All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabe Ben Simon,
And my name is Mohan Singhal.
and we're going to be talking today about the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So, before we get into the points that are covered in this book, um, we just want to talk a little bit about why is this important? Why are we talking about this today, and what's the value to you? So, here's a list of 7 different key points as to why this book is important. Before you just start reading every single point, I'll go through it one by one real quick. So, first one is get you out of a mental rut, give you new thoughts, new visions, new ambitions. Pretty much what this is saying is we want the reader to get a different perspective on how to interact with human beings. A lot of this book is about human psychology and how we communicate with each other. And this book helped Mohan and I really see things differently when it comes to interacting with our peers. Number two, enable you to make friends quickly and easily. Well, these points that help you with interaction with other people will actually translate into making friends easier. Number three, help you to win people to your way of thinking. A lot of the points made in this book deal with persuasion and how to get people attentive and listen to what you're saying and not just listen, but actually agree with you, not because you're kind of jamming your points down their throat, but you're communicating in a more smooth manner that helps people understand the points you're trying to make. Number four, increase your influence, your prestige, and your ability to get things done. This kind of goes along hand in hand with point three and ties into the values of leadership and how you get not just maybe one other person, but a group of people to buy into your way of thinking. Number five, help you to handle complaints, avoid arguments, keep your human contacts smooth and pleasant. This is really valuable to interacting with your friends and family members and possibly even just your peers, but we all know that with our friends and family we're a lot quicker to argue and say how we really feel, complain about something that the other person did, and argue about it. Well, I think at this stage a lot of us have realized that arguing doesn't always come out to the best results, so how are we going to handle avoiding that? Number six, make you a better speaker and a more entertaining conversationalist. Public speaking is very important and it translates into success in many different fields in your work. Even if you're just an engineer, not just an engineer, but a high valued engineer doing design work, there's going to be a time where you need to present your idea and your design to your boss and be able to sway your boss to approving this for production, or even just to buy into one certain aspect of your project that you want to do. And then on the other side, when it comes to being an entertaining conversationalist, well, you might find yourself, I definitely find myself in this situation a lot, being in a group of people and nobody really knows what to say or just with one other person. Well, how do you keep that conversation going and enjoy your time better? Number seven, finally, make the principles of psychology easy for you to apply in your daily contacts. Again, a lot of the principles taught in this book deal with human psychology, and we're going to find out how we can take these principles and apply it to our day to day lives. So this book is split up into 4 parts, and we're going to go through each part individually and talk about some of the principles. So the first part is fundamental techniques in handling people. So number one, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. This is huge. Criticism is the quickest way to turn someone else off. They'll completely shut down and not want to listen to what you're saying because they're getting personally attacked. That goes hand in hand with condemning, and complaining could also be taken as a personal criticism, even if you're complaining about the situation and not specifically the person. So it's best to avoid this altogether. Number two, give honest and sincere appreciation. We're very quick to judge other people when they do something wrong, but we quickly forget that we're not giving the appreciation necessary when someone does something right. And we all know how great it feels when someone, a peer, a teacher, family member says, "Hey, you did a really good job, and I think you're on the right track." And number three, arousing the other person and eager to want. The quickest way to get someone to do something for you or to work with you is to make them feel important. And that's something we're going to touch on later in our presentation. But what this comes down to is getting the other person to want to do well and not just telling them you have to do well. So I want to share with you a little excerpt from the book, and I'm going to do my best to summarize this that kind of demonstrates some of these three principles. So the story in the book, so the way this book is structured is that it covers each of these points, both in, it could either be more in depth with longer stories or just short points like, hey, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
So the next part is part 6. This part focuses on how to make people like you and how you appeal to people and actually seem genuinely interested in them and appealing to them. Number 1, you want to actually be genuinely interested in people. People can sense this very easily. People are not idiots. They can sense if you're actually interested in them, to get the conversation along, to get a free slice of pizza, or to get that paycheck at the end of the day, or get a quick discount. And they can also tell if you're actually interested in about their dog, interested in how their mom's doing, interested in how the kids are doing. People are smarter than you think. Number 2 is you want to smile. People don't realize, but smiling is one of the most powerful tools a human being can portray. This is because when you smile, you give off a very friendly vibe, which they pick up on immediately. Now imagine if you were to walk up to somebody and frown, and you have a very serious look on your face. They're not going to be nearly as open and willing to talk to you as if you were smiling. Number 3, remember that a person's name is, to that person, the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Think about every time you hear your name. You feel like you're important. You feel like you have something to do. Something is put in your hands and you want to make sure you deliver. Some kind of importance has been bestowed upon you. So people are that much more willing to have a conversation with you, and they have warmed up to you that much more already. Number 4 is you want to be a good listener and encourage others to talk about themselves. Just like number 3, somebody's own name and somebody's own story and own past is the sweetest thing that they can hear or talk about. Number 5 also goes hand in hand with number 3 and 4. You want to talk about somebody's interest. If somebody likes golf, then you're going to talk about the US Open. If somebody likes basketball, you're going to talk about LeBron James. This is the easiest way to appeal to a stranger. Simply by looking around their office as soon as you walk in, or looking around their car as soon as you get in the car, can make it so easy to appeal to whatever they have interest in. And number 6, you want to make the other person feel important. Numbers 1 through 5 reaches this goal, but you have to do it very carefully, without coming across as a suck-up, and without coming across as disrespectful. So you want to be extremely cautious, and you want to make sure that you are doing everything you can to appeal to this stranger in regards to what they like, and making sure that they know that you are genuinely interested in what they have to say.
Okay, so the first part of our presentation dealt with the first part of the title of How to Win Friends and Influence People, and that was How to Win Friends. Well, now as we're entering the second part of our presentation, respectively, this is about the second part of the title, and that is How to Influence People. So specifically, we're going to talk about how to win people to your way of thinking, or in other words, how to persuade someone to what you want. Now, the following are 12 different understandings that the book demonstrates through, again, a variety of stories. So the first one is, the only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Many of us, all of us, have really been in an argument before, again, whether it's with a friend or family or just a peer. And the results of our arguments tend out to usually be the same, and that's one of us or both of us are pissed off and aggravated, and we haven't really come to a conclusion. At least we've demonstrated more negative emotions than really problem solving. So arguing doesn't really get anywhere most of the time. Number 2, show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong. That is a personal attack. That is more of a subjective statement than an objective statement about the issue. It's always best to keep true to the issue at hand than personally attack other people. Maybe what the other person is saying is in fact wrong, but pointing it out is not going to do you any good. It's just going to make the other person upset and defensive and not want to agree with you any further. Now, if you're wrong, admit it quickly and empathetically. It's always hard to work with someone who won't admit that they're wrong, ever, even if they are wrong. Nobody wants to be that guy, and you shouldn't either. If we're wrong, then it's always best to say, hey, you know what, I was wrong, and move on. Number 4, begin in a friendly way. A great quote that kind of sums this up in the book is, a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. What that's saying is that starting off any argument or any sort of persuasion or disagreement about an issue, starting it off on a negative foot with a lot of negative emotions is not starting off in a progressive and a good way to deal with problems. All that does is put the wrong foot forward and starts animosity instead of trying to start out any sort of problem solving or persuasion in a positive manner. Number 5, start with questions which the other person will answer yes. I've seen this through my sales internship, and yes, this is something a little bit more geared towards sales, where if you're trying to get someone to agree with what you're saying or at least see your point of view, maybe not necessarily agree with it, but at least start seeing your point of view, it's great to get them to open up to the idea of yes, to the idea of I agree with what you're saying makes sense. So it's always best to start off with simple questions that gets the other person saying, yes, I agree. And then, the notion of saying yes to the bigger point you're trying to make isn't such a big deal. Number 6, let the other person do a great deal of the talking. There's a great little story in the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, about this point. Dale Carnegie is explaining how he went to a dinner party and he was talking with someone, and the other person was just happened to be a big talker. He loved talking, he loved to hear himself talk, and Dale Carnegie would kind of peg him on a little bit because he saw right away, okay, this person likes to talk, so you know what, why not give it to him? He looks like he's enjoying himself. And the next day he heard from a mutual friend that the guy he met said, wow, that guy Dale is very cool. What a great conversationalist. Call him a great conversationalist, yet Dale Carnegie barely said a word. So sometimes it's great to let the other person do the most of the talking. It gets them to open up and be more comfortable. Number 7, let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. So this is the concept of letting the other person own the idea. It might not be their idea, but you want them to think that it's their idea. And this, again, comes back to persuasion or sales in the tone that you want them to understand a certain aspect of what you're doing or what your thought process is. Well, you can phrase this instead of saying, hey, this is my idea. You can form it in questions and open-ended questions that might get your customer or whoever you're trying to convince of something, get them thinking sort of like how you're thinking, and then they realize that this idea that's really yours becomes theirs. And then once they have the idea, they own it. I mean, let's be real. We've all been in this situation where we've had a great idea and we think it's the best thing, since the automobile, so something ridiculous. We always thought that our ideas are the best. So that's how people feel about their ideas typically. Number 8, try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. This kind of goes back to that story about President Lincoln and General Meade in the Civil War. Lincoln didn't do a good job of seeing General Meade's point of view until he wrote down that angry letter and then realized what he was saying was pretty harsh and that he's not seeing the general's point of view. And this lesson is very transparent with working with other people. When you have an idea that's not in line with theirs, it's very hard to just see their way of thinking. But if we do that, sometimes it's easier for us to move forward and say, actually, I guess from their perspective, that does make sense, even if it doesn't make sense from your perspective. Number 9, be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. This kind of goes hand in hand with seeing things from the other person's point of view, understanding that whatever they're saying, whatever objective they have to your idea or whatever their line of thinking, it's for a reason. They have some motivating factor that's pushing their mindset in that direction. I know this is very vague and it's hard to be specific with the limited time we have, but just next time you're talking with someone trying to argue a point or really try to discuss a point, think about why they're saying the things they're saying. Number 10, appeal to nobler motives. What this means is the book talks about treating others as noble people, and they will see you as the same. If you give other people the benefit of the doubt as a noble person, then that's really reflective of you and your values, and that could again make interaction a lot easier, since they don't think you're out to get them. They think you're a noble person. And this is especially important in sales. Number 11, dramatize your ideas. So the big quote the book uses is, TVs and movies do it, why don't you? When you're making a point, when you want to sell an idea, and yes, you do sell ideas all the time, even if you're not in sales, it's one thing to state fact as truth and in a very dry blanket manner as if you're reading a book, or you really sell your idea, you dramatize your idea, you get people excited about what you're talking about, you want them to be inspired. And that makes a big difference when it comes time to getting people on board with whatever you're doing. And the last one, number 12, is throw down a challenge. What that means is instilling competition in your team. And this is from a leadership perspective, which we're going to jump into in the next section. People are inspired by competition, at least the people you want to work with. If you're a competitive person, you want them to be inspired by competition, and that helps rid of mediocrity and of repetitiveness. And this is something we talk about in industrial engineering with processes, is that maybe competition between one team and another will help inspire them to do more and do it better and faster.
The last part we're going to go over, part 4, talks about how to be a leader and how to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. One of the biggest things you have to keep in mind is you need to begin with praise and honest appreciation. If you go into a conversation with a loaded gun and you start cursing and yelling and putting them down and pointing out their flaws, the individual is not going to absorb any of the information you have to say. If you provide some kind of praise and you acknowledge the work that they've done and the success that they've done, they are going to have a reason to listen to what you have to say because you respect them and they know that you're going to give them some valuable advice. The second biggest thing is when you call attention to a mistake, you should do it indirectly so you don't offend the individual. For example, when addressing a group of men, you can say, "Gentlemen, you are leaders. You will be most effective when you lead by example. You must be the example for your men to follow. You know what the Army regulations say about haircuts. I'm going to get my haircut today, although it is still much shorter than some of yours. You look at yourself in the mirror, and you will feel like you need a haircut to be a good example. We'll arrange time for you to visit the post barbershop." This is a way that an Army general addressed a group of Army cadets for getting a haircut that is up to their standards, without pointing any of them out directly and putting any of them on the spot, but he merely conveyed a rule and presented a solution for all of them to abide by the rule. Number 3 is one of the biggest things that everybody forgets. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing the other person. There is not one single flawless individual in this world, and not even close to flawless. Every individual in this world has numerous flaws and numerous things that they can work on at any given time. With this in mind, if you bring up your own downsides and your own flaws, and you talk about how you've worked on them or how you are currently working on them, and then you bring up a similar flaw in the individual you are addressing, then they are going to be much more willing to accept the information because they can relate to you. So nobody likes to be given a direct order and be told what to do. A way to solve this problem and to get by this is to ask questions instead of giving a direct order. When you ask a question, individuals think about, okay, what do I have to do to make sure that that task is done? Because I told them it wasn't done. So what do I need to do? In their head, they're already thinking of different ways to address their problem and different tasks that they have lined up, ready to go. So you put the power in their hands. You don't take the power away from them and tell them what to do. Number 5 is when you are having a conversation or an argument with somebody, you want to let the other person save face. This means that when you guys are conversing and going back and forth, you don't want to ask questions that corner the individual and make them seem weak and powerless. If you ask questions that corner the individual and make them seem weak, then they're going to respond with either lies or they're going to respond with truth and they're going to respond with resentment because every answer they give makes them look weak and powerless. Another thing you can do is ask non-incriminating questions that leave them a way out, that help them realize what they've done and what they can do to be better without putting them on the spot. This way, you get the answers you want and you still have a productive conversation without pissing off the interrogator because he's not getting the responses he wants. So it goes both ways. Number 6 is very simple. Praise every improvement. Because if you don't, then why would they have any motivation to improve further? If you don't acknowledge improvement, it pretty much stunts their growth because they don't acknowledge that they've changed at anything. They don't have any motivation to change, and they don't see the reason to change. Number 7 is kind of vague, but you want to give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. In other words, you want to give a dog a good name. When you are referring to somebody, whether the other person is in earshot or not, you want to talk them up. You want to give them the kind of backing and history that makes them proud of who they are. You want to refer to them with pride. You want to refer to them as someone powerful, who's accomplished. Because even if they don't think they are as accomplished as that, they realize that other people see them for these traits, and it gives them a reason to live up to those traits. Number 8 is use encouragement and make the fault seem easy to correct. Every mistake has an easy solution, so you want to make sure that whoever made this mistake knows that there is an easy fix and you want to help them find the solution. Number 9 is make the other person happy about doing what you suggest. Sometimes this means going as far as including them in the decision-making process so they feel like they helped you come to this solution and the suggestion. Sometimes it's the only way to get somebody else to partake in a solution that you thought of. So to wrap things up, this book was written in 1936, but it is still so relevant today. The fundamentals in human dynamics and how people interact with each other and what people feel about each other and how to relate to one another is never going to change. So even though this book is extremely old, I highly, highly recommend it. Buying it on Amazon, downloading it online, anything. But get this book in your hands and read it and absorb it. No. Yeah. How much did they actually change though?
They've done, I think, 2 or 3.
But like, how much did they change?
Changes. I don't know. You just know because when you read through it, there's some things that you realize aren't from that age. Like that's completely different. Like they'll reference
President's afters.
I think they'll reference like a phone call or something like that, from 1936, or cell phones or something. Well, that's where you know it's not 1936, but it's not really relevant. It still is old. The majority of it and all the premise of it is.
Yeah. I wanted to add that about the got to read it several times too. Yeah. So this book was published in 1936, but it is still so relevant today. This is because the human dynamic of dealing with each other, appealing to each other, getting along with each other is never going to change. This book has been modified twice since it's been published, but these are very minute edits with more examples to further build the story. Also, I recommend reading this book several times. It is the only way to actually absorb and contain all of the information. You also need to practice everything you learn in the book. This is the only way to actually absorb the information and incorporate it into your daily life. But all in all, this is a very powerful book and there's a lot to learn, so I highly, highly recommend it.